My wife says she gets off school late on Tuesdays because she helps in the library. Yesterday, I found a motel receipt 50 kilometers from here, dated on our anniversary. If this story resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments which city you're watching from. We'd love to know where our community is growing. My name's David. I'm 36 years old, and my wife, Elena, is the most predictable person I know. Or so I thought. Elena is one of those people who eats the same breakfast every day at the same time, who keeps supermarket receipts in chronological order, and who's never broken a traffic rule. Our life was, to some, boring. To me, it was perfect. But perfection is a very thin coat of paint that cracks with any blow. My blow came in the stupidest way possible. A coffee stain and a coat that needed to go to the dry cleaners. It all started last Tuesday. Elena got home at 8:30 at night, like she always does on Tuesdays. She's an elementary school teacher, and, as she's told me for the last 2 years, she stays a couple of extra hours to organize the school library and help children with reading difficulties. It's something I've always admired about her vocation. That night she walked through the door complaining about the cold, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and went straight to the shower. "It's been an exhausting day, David. I need to disconnect," she told me. While she was in the bathroom, I noticed that her gray wool coat, the one I gave her for her last birthday, had fallen off the hanger in the hallway. Picking it up, I smelled a scent. It wasn't her usual soft floral perfume she wears for work. It was heavier, something that reminded me of clean hotel sheets, but mixed with a very subtle, almost imperceptible smell of tobacco. Elena hates tobacco. Smoking is forbidden at the school, even in the courtyard. I felt a strange pang, but I shook it off. Someone was probably smoking near the bus stop, I thought. However, shaking the coat to dust it off, something fell out of the inside pocket. It wasn't a love note or a phone number. It was a piece of thermal paper, small and crumpled. I bent down to pick it up. It was a receipt from a gas station on a national highway, almost an hour away from the school and in the opposite direction of our house. The time marked on the receipt was 6:15 p.m. that same Tuesday. At that time, according to what she texted me barely 10 minutes before that time, she was buried in children's books and stories. I stood in the hallway with the receipt in my hand and the sound of the shower running in the background. My brain tried to make up 1,000 excuses for her. Maybe she had to go buy a special book. Maybe she got lost, but made no sense. That gas station is near an area of roadside motels, a place nobody goes unless they want to hide. I opened her purse. I never do that. I respect her privacy to the max, but my hands moved on their own, driven by a cold adrenaline rushing down my spine. I rummaged through her keys, her wallet, and her tissues. At the bottom, in a small zippered compartment she rarely uses, I found another piece of paper. This was the one that broke my heart. It was a bill from a motel called Los Olivos. Date February 14th, our anniversary. That day she told me she had a mandatory teachers meeting and that we couldn't have dinner together until 10 p.m. I waited for her with candles, a bottle of wine, and her favorite meal. When she arrived, she looked radiant. She told me she loved me and was so sorry she was late because of work. We had dinner, laughed, and ended the night in the most romantic way possible. Now, looking at that paper indicating a 3-hour stay that same afternoon, I realized that every kiss she gave me that night, every "I love you," and every caress was part of a perfect performance. The woman I married, the one who promised me eternal loyalty, had spent the afternoon of our anniversary in a cheap room with someone else to then come home and get into my bed as if nothing had happened. The shower stopped. I heard the sound of the curtain drawing back. I put the papers in my pocket and quickly hung up the coat. I sat on the couch and turned on the TV, but I wasn't seeing anything. I only heard my own heartbeat sounding like hammer blows. When she came out of the bathroom, wrapped in her towel, with damp hair and that calm smile that had always given me peace, I felt nauseous. "What do you want for dinner, honey?" she asked me. So normal, so sweet, such a liar. In that moment, I knew my life had split in two. The David, who trusted blindly in the love of his life, had died in that hallway. The David who was now looking at her only saw a stranger, a person capable of keeping up a lie for months without blinking. I didn't say anything to her. No, I still need proof. I need to know who she was with, and since when my marriage became a farce. But the worst of all, what burns me most inside, is that next Tuesday, she'll tell me again she's going to the library, and I'll have to decide whether to stay home waiting for her or follow her to hell. Edit. Thanks for the comments on the post. Some say confront her now, others say be smart. I've decided to go with the latter. I don't want her manipulating me with the typical gaslighting of you're crazy. I just went for coffee. I have the receipts, but I need the full picture. Update 1. The thing that messes with your head the most after finding something like this isn't just the betrayal itself, but realizing how stupid you were for ignoring the signs for so long. I've been living in a sort of parallel reality for 3 days. I look at Elena, and I no longer see my wife. I see a professional actress who deserves an Oscar. These days, I've dedicated myself to observing. You know that feeling when you buy a specific model car, and suddenly you start seeing it on every street? Well, the same thing happens with lies. Once you detect the first one, all the rest start glowing like neon lights in the dark. The first thing I noticed was the new normality of her phone. Elena has always been careless with her cell phone. She used to leave it lying on the couch, in the kitchen. She even asked me to read her messages if she was cooking. But now, analyzing her behavior over the last few months, I realized that changed gradually. Now the phone never leaves her side. She takes it to the bathroom to listen to music, puts it face down on the table, and most suspiciously, she changed the unlock code. She told me she did it because at school children sometimes grab phones off desks, and I, like an idiot, believed her. Friday night, I tried a test. We were having pizza for dinner, a quiet, normal night. I decided to mention, casually, that next Tuesday I have the afternoon off, and I could pick her up from school to go to an early dinner at that place she likes. You guys don't know the change I saw in her eyes. It was a microsecond, but her pupils dilated and she got stiff. "Oh, I don't think that's a good idea, David," she told me with a voice far too calm. "On Tuesday, we've inventory in the library, and it's going to be total chaos. I'll probably finish very late and come out in a bad mood. Let's leave it for the weekend." Yes, there I had it. Live confirmation. It isn't that she gets out late, it's that she already has Tuesday reserved for her other life. I started remembering details from months ago. For example, her sudden interest in the gym. Elena's never been one to exercise, but suddenly she signed up for one near the school. She bought new workout clothes, the kind that fits too tight, and started carrying a gym bag every day. Now I wonder, does she really go to the gym? Or is that bag where she keeps the lingerie I don't even want to imagine she has? What hurts me the most is the kindness. If she were cold or we were fighting all the time, this be easier to digest. But she's still perfect. She asked me how work went. She makes me coffee in the mornings. She asked about my mother. It's a psychological cruelty I don't wish upon anyone. You're sitting across from the person you love, watching her lie to your face while passing you the salt, and you have to bite your tongue not to scream. Who is he? How can you kiss me after being with him? Yesterday, I did something that makes me feel like trash, but I needed more data. I checked our joint bank account. Elena is very careful, but she made a mistake. There are constant cash withdrawals, always $50 or $100 every Tuesday and some Thursdays. They're small amounts, enough not to raise suspicions if you aren't looking for them, but added up it's thousands of dollars in the last few months. Money for hotels, for dinners that aren't with me, for a life I'm indirectly funding. I also noticed a change in her social circle. She started mentioning a certain Julia Lott, a new PE teacher at her school. She says he's a very nice guy who helps a lot with the more rebellious kids. At first I didn't think much of it, but now every time she says his name, I notice a different inflection in her voice. It's a softness, a familiarity she previously only reserved for me. I've spent the last few nights awake, pretending to sleep while she rests next to me. I stare at the ceiling, thinking about how many times I've been made a fool of at school meetings, or if our mutual friends know anything. Paranoia is a poison that spreads fast. I start doubting everything that time she went on a teacher's retreat one weekend. That night, she said she got a flat tire. Everything is suspicious. Now what's next terrifies me. Tomorrow is Monday. Tuesday is the day I've been thinking about buying a dash cam or following her myself. I don't want to hire a private detective yet because, honestly, I don't want a stranger seeing my humiliation before I process it myself. It's incredible how the human brain can hold two truths at the same time. A part of me still wants to believe there's a logical explanation, that the motel receipt was a friend's and she was just covering for her, that the tobacco smell is from a colleague. But the other part, the one holding our anniversary receipt in my pocket, knows my marriage is a burning building and I'm just waiting for the walls to fall. I feel alone, very alone. I can't tell my friends because if I end up deciding to forgive her, which I doubt, they'll always look at her with disgust. I can't tell my family because it'd destroy my parents who adore her. So here, I am writing to strangers on the internet while my wife sleeps across the room, probably dreaming of the man she's replacing me with on Tuesday afternoons. Tomorrow I'm buying a dash cam. If on Tuesday she doesn't go to that school, I'll have the final proof. This feels like a horror movie where I'm the only one who knows the killer is already inside the house. Wish me luck because I think my life, as I know it, ends in less than 48 hours. Update 2. Tuesday arrived, and I wish I hadn't gotten out of bed. First of all, thanks for the advice about the dash cam. In the end, I couldn't buy it in time. So, I decided to do the oldest trick in the book, follow her myself. I asked for the day off from work. I told my boss I had a family emergency, and technically I didn't lie. My family is falling apart. I woke up at 6 in the morning with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't even let me swallow coffee. Elena was acting completely normal. That's the part that blows my mind the most. She put on her gym outfit, the one I mentioned before, and said goodbye with the same kiss as always. Don't wait for me for dinner, David. Today the library inventory is going to take a long time, she told me. It hurt so much I almost punched the wall as soon as she closed the door. I waited 10 minutes and went down to the car I borrowed from a cousin. She recognizes mine from miles away. I parked 2 blocks from the school and waited. At 3:30 in the afternoon, which is when her extra hours supposedly start, I saw her come out, but she wasn't going to the library. She wasn't carrying a single book. She was walking almost skipping with an energy I hadn't seen from her in years. She got in her car and drove straight to a Starbucks on the outskirts of town. I was 2 or 3 cars behind, feeling like the most pathetic guy in the world. In the parking lot, a guy was already waiting for her. It was Julian, the PE teacher. He isn't a magazine model or anything like that. He's an ordinary guy, which makes it worse. They hugged. It wasn't a friendly hug. It was the kind of hug where she buried her face in his neck, and he put his hands on her waist in a way that, well, you know. They stood there a minute, and then she got into his car. She left her car sitting there. I followed him down the national highway. My hand was shaking so much on the steering, while I almost ran off the road a couple times. They drove for about 40 minutes until they arrived exactly where I feared, the Los Olivos Motel, the same one from our anniversary receipt. Seeing his car, their car, pull into one of those private garages with a curtain took my breath away. I parked a little ways away, turned off the engine, and sat there in silence. I don't know how much time passed. 10 minutes, maybe 20. My mind was blank. I only heard the tick-tock of the cooling engine. I couldn't contain myself. I got out of the car and walked toward the motel office. I gave $20 to the guy at the front desk and told him my brother had forgotten his house keys in his friend's car, and I knew they were in room 14. I saw the number as they passed. The guy didn't even look at me, just nodded. I walked down the outside hallway. The smell of chlorine and cheap cigarettes was unbearable. When I reached the door of 14, I stopped. I could hear soft music inside, and then I heard her laugh. That laugh I thought was only mine. They were joking about something. Do you think David's suspects? I heard his voice. Not at all. She answered, and her voice sounded so different, so free from the burden of being the perfect wife. David lives in his own world. As long as he has his hot dinner and his TV, he doesn't notice anything. He's a good man, but he's so predictable. That word asterisk predictable. I felt like I'd been shot in the chest. All this time, I thought our stability was our strength, and to her it was my biggest flaw. I was the useful fool who paid the mortgage on the house where she rested after rolling around with another man. I didn't kick the door. I didn't make a scene. I turned around and went back to the car. I sat there and cried like a baby. Not for her, but for the 10 years I threw in the trash for the guy who thought he had a happy life and who turned out to be the joke of the school's faculty room. Mary, I drove back home before her. Now I'm sitting here in the dark of our living room writing this. Elena just sent me a text. Asterisk still at the library. Babe, there's too much work. I love you. Don't wait for me. Awake, asterisk. I've her stuff packed in 3 trash bags in the garage. I've changed the lock on the back door, which is how she always comes in. In about 20 minutes, I'll hear her car in the driveway. My plan was to be calm, but I've a rage burning my throat. This is no longer a suspicion. This is the end. Tomorrow I'll tell you what happened when she tried to put her key in and couldn't. Do you think I should open the door for her and let her explain, or just let her stay outside with her trash bags? Reading you all. I need to think of something fast. Update 3. It's over. It's all done. I don't know whether to feel relieved or just empty, but seeing her face when she realized the useful fool was 3 steps ahead of her was the best reward I could get. I'm writing this from a hotel, not because she kicked me out, but because I can't stand the smell of her perfume in my own house. But let's take it step by step, because what happened last night was like surgery without anesthesia. After reading your comments on the last post, I decided I wasn't going to yell. Yelling is for the weak, and I'd already been the weak one for a long time. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, turned off all the living room lights except for a small floor lamp, and put 3 things on the coffee table: the gas station receipt, the Los Olivos motel bill from our anniversary, and her leather planner open to Tuesday's page. I heard her car pull into the driveway at 10:45 p.m., exactly the time she calculated I'd already be half asleep in front of the TV. I heard the engine turn off and the silence that follows when someone stays in the car for a few seconds, probably checking their phone for the last time to delete their lover's messages before stepping into their real life. Then, the sound of the key. Asterisk click, click. She tried to turn it once, twice. I heard her forcing the doorknob. She went silent, confused. Then she tried the back door. Asterisk. Click, click. Nothing. That's when my phone vibrated on the table. It was her. I didn't answer. She called again. I let the ringing sound fill the dark room while I simply stared at the front door. Finally, she rang the doorbell. First a short ring, then a long, desperate one. I walked to the door, opened it abruptly, and stood there, blocking the way. "David, you scare me," she said, trying to recover that tired working wife voice. "I don't know what's wrong with the lock. I think it got stuck. Can I come in? It's freezing out here." I looked her up and down. She was wearing the gray coat, the same one smelling of tobacco. "The lock isn't stuck, Elena," I told her in a voice so flat it scared even me. "I changed it this afternoon." She blinked, processing the information. She tried to let out a nervous chuckle, the one she uses when she wants to downplay something. "What are you talking about? Why would you do something like that? It's a joke." "It isn't funny, David. Seriously, I'm dead tired from the library. And how is Julian?" I interrupted her. The name dropped between us like a grenade. Elena's face transformed into something I'd never seen. It wasn't sadness. It was pure terror mixed with instant denial. Her mouth opened, but no words came out for a few seconds. "Who?" "The guy from school." "David, what's wrong with you? Are you drunk?" She tried the gaslighting you all warned me she'd do. "I was in room 14 of Los Olivos 2 hours ago, Elena. I heard what you think of me. I heard how predictable I am." There was a dead silence. She took a step back, moving away from the porch light. Her mask completely broke. She was no longer the sweet teacher. She was a woman trapped in a dead end. "David, it isn't what it seems." "Can I explain, really? Julian was just going through a tough time, and I don't want explanations." I cut her off again. "What I want is for you to walk to the garage." I guided her almost like an escort towards the side garage. There on the floor were the 3 black trash bags I filled in the afternoon. "There's your life, Elena. Your clothes, your expensive shoes, that lingerie I never saw in your planners. I've taken everything that reminded me of you out of my house. Your house." She yelled, recovering some of her aggressiveness. "It's our house. You can't just throw me out like a dog. I've rights." "You're right." I nodded with glacial calm. "You've rights, but you also have a reputation. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., your school principal, the school board, and the mothers in your class's WhatsApp group are going to receive an anonymous email. The email contains the photos I took today at the motel, our anniversary bill, and a screenshot of our joint account transactions where you took out money for your dates." She went mute. She knew I wasn't joking. For a woman who lives off her image as an exemplary teacher, That was the end of everything. David, please don't do that. I'll lose my job. I'll lose everything. It was a mistake. I swear. He doesn't mean anything. It's just she started sobbing. But they were tears of desperation, not remorse. He means enough for you to sleep with him on the day we celebrated 10 years together, I told her, feeling the whiskey burning my stomach. He means enough for you to mock me in a cheap motel bed. I took out my phone and showed her the screen. I had the email drafted, ready to send. If you take your bags right now, get in your car, and never set foot on this property again, I'll delete the draft. I'll give you a mutual agreement divorce. No scandals, but you leave here with nothing more than what's in those bags and the car I paid for. If you try to come in, if you call the cops, if you try to fight for the house, the send button will be the last thing you see. She stared at me with deep hatred. There was no trace of the Elena I loved anymore. In her place was a stranger who despised me for catching her. Without another word, she grabbed 2 of the bags. They were heavy, but rage gave her strength. She dragged them to her car and threw them in the back seat. She went back for the 3rd bag. You'll regret this, David, she spat at me while closing the trunk. You're a small, resentful man. Julian is right. You're pathetic. Maybe I'm pathetic, I replied while closing the garage door. But I'm the owner of a house where a liar no longer lives. Goodbye, Elena. I closed the door and locked the deadbolt. I sat on the floor in the hallway and stayed there, listening as her car sped away, burning rubber. For the first time in months, the air in the house felt clean. There was no smell of tobacco or strange perfumes or secrets. But then came the crash. I realized that my revenge, however satisfying, didn't give me back those 10 lost years. My house was empty, my bed was cold, and the predictable man now had to learn to live in a world where the person he trusted most turned out to be his worst enemy. Tomorrow I have an appointment with the lawyer. I've decided I'm not going to send the email to the school. For now, I'll keep it as life insurance. If she tries to play dirty in the divorce, the whole world will know who the teacher of the year really is. Thanks for being there, community. Without your comments, I probably would have believed her lies one more time. Now I need to sleep. Even if it's the first time in a long time I'll be doing it alone. Do you guys think I was too harsh, or should I have sent the email anyway, so she'd suffer the real consequences? I feel a little guilty, but I guess that's part of the process. Final update. 3 weeks have passed, the divorce is underway, and I can finally say I'm breathing again. I'm writing this from my new office. Well, it's the same old one, but I redecorated everything. I took down the pictures we chose together, painted the walls a color she didn't like, and, most importantly, I sold the bed. I didn't want to sleep another second on a piece of furniture I shared with a ghost. A lot of people asked me in the previous post if I sent the email to the school. The short answer is I didn't have to. Karma sometimes has a very efficient way of working without you having to get your hands dirtier than necessary. It turns out Julian, the star teacher, wasn't just my wife's lover. Apparently the guy had a pattern. A week after I kicked Elena out, a scandal broke out at the elementary school. One of the school board mothers discovered Julian was having a fling with another teacher in admin. The guy was a social predator who looked for women in stressful situations to comfort them. When Elena moved in with him, because yes, she went straight to his apartment that night, she found out she wasn't the only one or special. They lasted exactly 4 days together before she discovered messages on his phone, which were identical to the ones he sent her. The grand irony, Elena ended up being the victim of the same game she played on me. I found out from a former colleague of hers who called to check on me. She told me Elena and Julian had a screaming match in the school parking lot, and now they're both under administrative investigation. She asked for stress leave, but we all know it's because she can't look anyone in the eye in the hallways. As for the divorce, she tried to act dignified at first. Her lawyer sent me a letter demanding half the value of the house and spousal support. I almost laughed out loud when I read it. I simply had my lawyer send her a copy of the motel bill from February 14th and a USB drive with the audio from room 14. There were no more demanding letters. We signed the agreement 3 days ago. She waived any right to the house in exchange for me not leaking the contents of that USB or filing a lawsuit for disgraceful conduct that would affect her teaching pension. She left with her car, her 3 trash bags, and an emotional debt I hope takes her years to pay. Do you know what the most curious thing is? The silence. For 10 years, my life was filled with the noise of her lies, her invented stories about the library, her fake laughs. Now that she's gone, the silence in my house is absolute. But it isn't a sad silence, it's a peaceful silence. It's the silence of someone who no longer has to struggle to fit into a farce. The other day, I went to a bar alone. I sat at the bar, ordered a beer, and stared at the people. For a moment, I felt fear of never being able to trust anyone again. But then I realized something. The fact that she was a professional liar doesn't take away my ability to be a man of integrity. I'm not going to let her betrayal change. Who am I? I'm David. I'm a good guy, and maybe I am predictable. But in a world full of backstabbers, being someone you can trust is a superpower, not a flaw. To those going through something similar, the pain doesn't go away overnight. There are still mornings when I wake up and reach for her hand on instinct only to remember everything and feel an emptiness in my chest. But that emptiness is filling up with new things. I'm hiking again, something she hated. I adopted a dog, an old Labrador nobody wanted at the shelter, and it turns out he's the best Netflix buddy I've ever had. Elena tried to call me last night from an unknown number. I didn't answer. I blocked the number and deleted the log. I don't need to know if she's sorry, if Julian left her, or if she's cold. She chose her path on February 14th in that motel, and I chose mine the moment I changed the lock.